Gracias por estar aquí. Después de la excelente ponencia, ¿no?, que nos ha hecho nuestro querido Iñaki, debemos estar a la altura, por lo tanto espero que el debate sea fructífero. Buenos días, també bon dia. Good morning everyone. I welcome to the panel, Public Radio Around the World, Traditional and Alternative Models. I'm pleased to introduce Edika Kurnokova. I don't know if your name is like this. She is the head of radio at the European Broadcasting Union. She works with public services as well as a wider radio industry advocacy for radio, especially focusing on distribution via connected dashboard. With the relevant international committees and professional groups, she has been developing work around the radio, the live radio, relation of radio and podcasting, providing a space to share, network, and learn for senior audio makers and radio creatives, and also looking at innovation happening in the radio world today. Also, she worked in the Czech radio, where she set up the innovation team and developed a number of projects using new technologies and innovation around audio content. Thank you so much to be here. Please, you have 20 minutes. Maybe I try to control the time. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rosa, for the introduction, and thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be speaking to you today and to join the conference in Barcelona. I was at the beginning this morning, and it's impressive how many people are actually engaged and the energy in the room, so it's wonderful to be here. I was asked to talk about public service radio in the world. I will focus on European radio because I think the situation is different, and I'm not for sure an expert on all radio in the world. But as Rosa was saying, at this point I'm working at the European Broadcasting Union that's based in Switzerland. And our members are all public radios in Europe and some of the international as well. So we have CBC, we have ABC in Australia and a couple of others, but the core of the work that we are doing is based in Europe. So that's what I would like to talk about today. My presentation, I will try to keep it a bit shorter, but I would like to give a context to what we'll be talking about with Rosa and the other panelists on the panel. And I would just like to present a couple of maybe things we can discuss or a couple of challenges that radio might be facing today. We have celebrated 100 years of radio in Europe 2 years ago. That was BBC. It was the first radio organization or media organization set up in United Kingdom in 1922. Yesterday was 100 years of radio in Barcelona and in Spain. Congratulations to that. You're not far behind BBC. I think you're actually one of the oldest in Europe. And what I think we can say about radio, for sure it's not going anywhere. I think we just saw it on the video. But I would also say that radio is one of the most flexible medium today. It's very easy to produce, it's quite simple to distribute, and it's very flexible. So whatever new innovation there comes, if it's podcasting, if it's AI, if it's whatever else, I think radio can always find a way to adapt to it and attract the listeners to the new content. And I think that's something that's very special about radio, because we can see in some other media sectors that maybe we might see the end of print one day. Maybe there might be some complete disruption to television broadcasting. But I think live radio is not going to go anywhere, and I think it's really flexibly adapting to everything that's coming up. Today, weekly reach of radio in Europe, that's commercial as well as public service, is 82% per week. Among young people, it's 73%. This is live radio broadcasting. So it means that 82 or over 80% of people in every European country at some point during the day or during the week listen to live radio, be it national, be it regional, be it community radio, be it whatever other radio. I think this is a figure, it's quite stable over the last years. Maybe it's dropping in terms of how much time they listen to. So it drops in terms of the minutes listening to, but this figure, the 82%, is quite stable. Radio is the most trusted medium in Europe. So people who listen to radio, over 56%, they think that radio is really trusted. And whatever is said there, especially in the news content, and I'm sure we'll be also talking about fake news, people come to radio for verified information. And I think that's something that we need to make sure that we preserve. This is public service, but also commercial radio. So I think this figure is very important for us. TV, press, internet, and social media are all behind. On the European Union, so these are only countries in the European Union, on the trust index, radio again is the most the most trusted medium, but also it's a medium that's more trusted than some of the institutions. So even like courts, legal institutions, etc., radio has much bigger trust in every country. And I think this is something that's really, we can't forget about that. I think it's a message and a relationship that we have with the audience that we need to be responsible for. I will say one more point for radio. In emergency situations, this is actually a print screen from the Swiss radio. It's in, they are based in Switzerland. In terms of the emergency warning, and I think this is probably applicable to Spain and to any other country, radio is one of the most stable networks to deliver information. I think in Valencia today, I mean, what's happening there with the floods, I'm sure that a lot of people are tuning into radio to actually get the information that's local, that's current, and that's coming immediately, and they can trust it. So they don't go to social networks, but they go to some source of information that they can really trust. And I think that's something that is increasingly important, unfortunately, in Europe, because we have a lot of natural disasters. I mean, we have wars going on, we have other complications in our lives, and I think this is something that, again, might not be every day needed, but when it's needed, we need to make sure that radio is there and it's stable. I will also say one thing, because I will be talking quite a lot about online space, and I think online space is also about young audiences. But at the beginning, I would like to say that radio is, of course, listened to also by older people, and that's something that we can't forget, because for older people, it might not be the case that they would be listening to podcasts or using their mobile phone or whatever. But this is actually a figure from the COVID, when the lockdown started. Over 84% of people who are over 70 years old in Europe said that radio was their best companion because they were stuck at home, they couldn't meet anyone, and radio was a companion, so they didn't feel lonely. It was playing music that they liked, it was delivering information, it was just their best friend when they were at home. And I think that relationship that listeners have built with radio is something that we need to treasure, because they don't come to any other source of media for a companionship, for just listening to the voice that they trust and listening to the voice that calms them down. And I think that's something that we also have to keep in mind, even when we speak about the online environment. So, what is radio today? I think on the left side, that's radio as you all know it. It's a microphone, it's a studio, it's host, I think it's the energy of live broadcasting. What's happening on the right side, all the online phones, online mobile apps, online content, podcasts, that's something, of course, that we also love as well, because that's easy to use, it's where we want it, if it's on this device, if it's on your iPad, if it's wherever else. And I think both of these have to function in parallel. So it's not live broadcasting over podcast, it's not podcast over live broadcasting. I think it all has to work together as a mix that we offer to the audience. I think probably you have all seen it, and it actually happened a couple of days ago or weeks ago. These American elections were referred to as the elections where podcasts were increasingly important. Both of the candidates, Kamala Harris as well as Donald Trump, at the end of the campaign, what they did was they went for interviews into podcasts. They didn't go into traditional media, into television, into newspapers. They were to podcasts. And I think that it clearly shows, and I think even Donald Trump said it after his victory, after he won, that the creators' economy and what's happening on the online market and attracting young audience is really becoming important, and it has a huge impact. So it's not something for 10,000 people sitting somewhere by their computer, but these figures, and I believe for Joe Rogan, it was over 50 million people who actually listened to that podcast. And of course, it's a cumulative number, so the more you spread it and you distribute it, the more people it will get. It's not a small figure. I think it's quite a substantial figure, and I think that's also something we need to keep in mind. Now, in terms of the distribution and the receivers, that's a radio receiver, that's a radio receiver, and smart speaker is a radio receiver. I think because radio has always been referred to as the first picture, it was always a device. It's a broadcasting, but it was always a device. Now I think the audio content can be distributed into basically any device, anything from mobile phones, computers, smart speakers, smart televisions everywhere. And I think that's another pressure that's on the organizations, on you who are broadcasting and who have radio stations, to make sure that your content is accessible on across all of these devices, that your app is up to date, that it's working on all these devices. And I think that's increasingly also important for putting budget into it, for putting your teams into it, and that whole environment, I think, internally changes as well. If I'm talking about the online, I think what we need to make sure we are aware of is where is our audience. If you want to be where your audience is, I think, and that goes from social networks, this goes from platforms, as I was saying, different devices. Building that relationship is not just a radio station towards a listener, but it's also a radio station towards somebody who uses Instagram, somebody who listens to Spotify, somebody who listens to whatever other podcast or app. And I think that is... your team have to be very creative in coming up with some content that's really working across these devices and that's attracting the audience as I'm sure you want to attract. You probably will want to have your own app, so you will want to have a platform or website and your own app that you're in control of. But that means also it should be easy to use, it should be simple for people to download, and that costs money and that costs a lot of time. I think everyone likes Spotify, but they're simple to use and there are hundreds of people behind it and thousands of euros behind that, so they have a huge team. I think for a radio organization who has never developed a platform up until now, that's something that they need to use, but also they need to have internal resources to build it right, because I think if you don't have a strong app, if you have some kind of an app that's working okay, that's fine, but then you need to make sure that your content is distributed at other apps, because that's where people will be at some point listening to you. What I'm saying, I think, is clear from all of that. You probably also want to think about the transformation of your organization. I think that's another huge challenge, especially for organizations who are 100 years old or who have been there for a very long time, because those organizations have been set up for linear live broadcasting. I think everything that comes with digital space, with online, bringing new people, that means a huge shift internally. I think with your processes, with how the company is set up, how your teams are structured, how they are functioning together. And that, I think it's something that, of course, I mean, listeners are not interested in that because you need to listen to, they want to listen to something that's interesting to them. But on the background, I think that's something that's really taking a lot of energy and a lot of your time, because that's something that needs to be done and as smooth as possible. Big tech, I think it goes also, obviously it's more important for big languages like English or German, but Spanish is also a huge language and international language. I think the relationships you will build with your platforms here in this country or in the Spanish environment, how you negotiate the terms of functioning so they don't use you, but you use them in a smart way. They work for you what you want to do, but it's not based on they are only taking your content and monetizing it, but it's the other way around. You get your content to where you want and they do it for you. I think that's something that needs to be constantly renegotiated, because it's, I mean, the market is so fast that what was correct 2 years or 3 years ago, today is completely changing. I think the disruption is so quick that you just need to have somebody responsible for that, for those negotiations and for those relationships, to make sure you get out of it what you want, and to be confident because you have the content and that's what they want. I mean, they don't have the audience, they don't have the content, that's you who has that. And I think that confidence needs to be built over time. This is just a print screen that my colleagues from the research team in Geneva did. This is how the platforms world actually looks like. It's for both TV and radio, so you can see how many brands there are, what is their significance, how strong they are. The public media are not on it, public radio is not on it, but you can for sure see Spotify, Apple, etc. What is also interesting is this figure. On the right side, you see how much money the big tech is putting into content and into distribution. So it's Amazon, Apple, the big ones. The increase over the 10 years has been 400%, and it's obviously still increasing, so this is quite impressive. On the left side, you see all public radios and TVs in Europe together. And I'm sure you also have your problems here in Spain, but if you look across European media sector and what transitions they are going through. It's in France, but it's also in other countries, in Central Europe for sure, in Germany, and a couple of others, renegotiating the budgets, renegotiating the stability of the company, renegotiating the legal framework. I think that all is on top of this budget. You have other obligations and other things that you also need to deal with. So I'm not saying it's hopeless, I'm not saying it's useless, but it's just, I think it's good to see that comparison. What I feel we need to do more of, and that's also what Rosa was saying, where my work is based on mostly, it's collaboration on the European level. I think we need to be careful that where we can collaborate, we have to collaborate. It goes for both public service as commercial radio. I think we can always compete on the talent, on the young people, on the content. I think the most creative you are, the better for the listeners. But where we have to collaborate, it is distribution, and especially distribution across online field. I think we need to work together to make sure that radio stays where we want it to stay, on the devices or wherever else. This is one of the projects that my colleagues have developed from the technical department. It's called the Connected Car Playbook, where we are very much working with the car industry on keeping radio on the dashboard, because the more the dashboard gets connected, I think the bigger chance there might be that it won't be radio on it anymore. And radio has always been one push of a button away from you, and that's something that we need to work together as an industry to protect that. RTV East was definitely involved in this project, as a couple of others, Radio France, Swedish Radio, etc., etc. And I think that's something that we need to do more of, and we need to be much stronger in this. These are 4 principles we came together when we were talking about distribution of radio in the digital space. Radio must remain easy to use. People love the simplicity of radio. We must protect it. It should be impossible to miss. So as I say, you come into the car, you come into wherever your kitchen, radio has to be there. And it's not negotiable. Radio has to be there. In the car, it has to be personalized. People love personalized content. I'm driving through Barcelona. I'm not interested in traffic news in Madrid. I'm interested in traffic news in Barcelona. I'm interested in the local weather forecast or musicians. And I think that's what we also want to work on. And as I say, radio comes as a package. The 4th one, it's all radio. So it's national, public service, commercial, regional, community, podcast, live, whatever, it has to be there. So those are 4 principles that we came up together with our working groups, and this is something that I think we all have to work towards. This is, I won't go for sure in detail of this, but this is how we are structuring the work in the car. So we are aware of broadcast, of on-demand, and also of voice recognition, because I think voice, especially with AI, will be becoming more and more important. So it's just how the playbook is structured. I think this is one of my last slides. As I was saying at the beginning, radio is there for 100 years, but it's very flexible and very innovative. I think AI, that when it came 2 years ago into every industry, it's not just radio, it's, I think, everywhere in our life, in every single sector. We have to live with it. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It's here, and we have to live with it. These are just 2 examples of how some of our members are working with that. I think AI is a whole concept, but it's also a tool. It's something that you can have in your phone, and it can make your life easier. You can, as a producer, you can play with it if it's making your work simpler, or you can, what one of my colleagues said, I can't wait AI to do the monkey job so I can be more creative. So I can just put in there the information that needs to be reported, like metadata, but then I can come up with new ideas for programs. And I think this is a brilliant way to look at it, not to be afraid of it, but to really come and say, okay, well, I just need to learn something new, because it's not going to go anywhere in 2 years. I mean, it will stay, and it will for sure be bigger and bigger. And this is very last slide. I'm going to play you a very short clip. I think it's only 20 seconds. It's from the Swiss Broadcasting, RTS, from their youth station called Couleur 3. It was broadcast at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I hope it works.
Et c'est parti pour les infos de 7 heures qui vont certainement nous rappeler à quel point le monde va mal en ce moment.
C'est vrai, c'est pas tout faux. Ça fait un moment qu'on n'a pas entendu parler d'un truc positif dans l'actualité.
Mais bon, au moins, on pourra toujours se consoler en se disant que notre petite heure d'émission sur Cool Astro va nous permettre de nous évader un peu de cette réalité sombre et désespérante.
Exactement, Virginie. Et qui sait, peut-être qu'on va quand même rire un peu malgré tout.
En tout cas, on se retrouve juste après les infos en espérant que cette heure d'émission nous fera oublier un peu l'état lamentable du monde.
Speak French. I am not sure if you could recognize everything is AI. Voices, scripting, music, everything is AI. There was not a single person who would put work into this. And they broadcast it, they put it on air. They, of course, I mean, they were very vocal about saying this is synthetic voice, this is AI. but they just wanted to test their audience if they would recognize it. There were some French speakers who say, like, maybe the pronunciation, it could be better, but it can be scary. I mean, it can be very scary, and I just wanted to play it because I think that it's something that we can't avoid. And but as I said before, it can also be a great tool that you can actually make the use of in your work where you want to. It doesn't have to take over your job. But coming back to what I was saying at the beginning about trust and the relationship we have with the audience, I think there are different approaches to that. I think it raises a lot of ethical questions. Do we want to use that? Do we want to say to people, we have built the trust with you, you trust us, and this is now what we are going to use? Maybe yes, maybe not. I don't know. I don't have the answer. I think everybody approaches it from a different perspective, but it's just something I think that our industry should not ignore because it's very important. So I don't want to sound pessimistic because I started in the optimistic way, but for public radio today, I think the challenges are numerous. It's funding pressure, it's the online environment, young audiences. I think there are plenty of things that we can talk about. But what I have said at the beginning, and again, coming back to Barcelona, celebrating 100 years of radio yesterday, and I'm sure the celebrations will still continue in this conference, I think it's a clear sign, and also seeing a lot of young people in the room, that radio is not dead and it's not going anywhere. It's just we need to adapt to a lot of things today. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.